Hello everyone, I'm Charlie, one half of the Sisters in a Hot Mess duo. As Toki said in her bonus episode, it turns out we are, and mostly me, way more of a hot mess than when we first thought. And trying to create a podcast while working full-time, parenting, studying, has turned out to be quite a big ask. We had just been about hanging on and managing, but Toki not turning her mic on for the food episode recording seemed like a good opportunity to stop for a minute, regroup, and take the opportunity to do these little intro videos. We're coming out of winter here in Australia, so the twins and their crappy premature baby immune systems have been catching every nursery illness under the sun, and I always get really poorly too. And they also had chickenpox this time, which really ridiculously I thought they couldn't get because they've been vaccinated, but obviously that is not how vaccines work. Anyway, so as Tox did, I'm going to do a short introduction to myself and how I have ended up here doing this podcast with her. I am a climate lawyer and researcher based in Melbourne. And because of those things, I have a decent understanding of the climate science and the implications if we don't hold temperatures to 1.5 degrees in line with the goals of the Paris Agreement. And I often swing between the feelings of hope and complete and utter total despair. I am a very big feeler of things, and sometimes I find it hard to pull myself out of the holes of doom I find myself in. Last week being an example of that. In quick succession here in Australia, we had the release of the National Climate Risk Report, which we've been waiting for from the government for about 2 years, and then the updating of Australia's nationally determined contributions for their national emissions reductions target under the Paris Agreement. And both of those things, both the horror of what was contained in the climate risk assessment, which were things that, lots of people already knew, but were really, it was really confronting reading it. And then what was a real trying to be all things to all people, updated national target. I was not feeling good about life last week. But it is one of the reasons as well that Toki and I have decided to do this podcast, because it's having these conversations and talking about this in the context of a, more fun, easygoing way than me sitting in the fetal position crying. And Toki talked about her journey to having ED, and while I was incredibly lucky that I didn't have the same struggles to get pregnant, in mid-July 2022, a good few months early, the twins arrived in a very chaotic manner, and absolutely did not have that dreamy newborn bubble that Toki talked about. The girls were in hospital for the first 3 weeks, and once they were home, the challenges of trying to parent and feed two premature babies consumed mine and Tom's life for like the first 4 months. And in fact, pretty much the whole of the first year, I was in survival mode, really clinging on for dear life. And I had a pretty rough time with postnatal depression and anxiety during that period. And I still struggle with the trauma from their birth and just now all the other shit that's going on in the world that makes it hard to exist. I am much better medicated for it, and obviously years of therapy now, but it still for me sometimes all feels way too much. And after a year off work, I returned to parental leave and pretty much found myself overwhelmed quite quickly. That came off the back of then the girls first. I returned back to work after 12 months parental leave and pretty soon found myself really overwhelmed. As I was going back to work, and my husband Tom was able to look after them, the girls then had their first winter in daycare. And as I mentioned at the beginning, they have crappy baby preemie baby immune systems, and that first winter was horrendous. I was so overwhelmed trying to work, study, be a good mother, constantly feeling like I wasn't doing enough in terms of the climate crisis, and this overwhelm and led me to the path of the Wattle Fellowship at Melbourne University, which is where the idea for this podcast was born. I often tell people that the fellowship changed my life, and it really is not an over-exaggeration. I was able to re-find the joy and the less seriousness of the subject matter of my career. And one of the really important lessons from Wattle was that impact, which up until that point had felt really measurable by my professional career, was that it doesn't only mean impact in my professional life or my academic life, but there are so many meaningful, important and fun ways to create impact, engage with people, and have the sorts of real conversations with people in similar situations, with young children, just trying to get through each week dealing with unhinged toddlers in my case. And I was talking to my sister about my project idea for Wattle, because Toki's such a whiz at social media stuff and marketing, and she's really funny. And then it was literally like a light bulb went off in my head, and was like, well, instead of asking you ideas about what I should do, please come and do this with me. And as you will have already started to get a sense of, she's really relatable and funny and brings the right tone and balances my sometimes doom and bogged down in the nerdy details. Toki was like, no, this is boring. This is too much. Whereas I'm sort of getting, overexcited about some really nerdy sciencey point, which has been a really good learning for me, because as we do the prep and the research for each episode, sometimes what I think is interesting and fun is not. But yes, life is hectic. The twins keep Tom and I very busy, also highly amused. And when Toki and I were preparing for and recording the food episode, the girls understand that I am a vegetarian. And so I was talking to them about it one day and asked if they wanted to be a vegetarian like Mummy. And they both immediately looked up at me and were like, no, we love meat, Mummy. So it's interesting to sort of like balance that, and also balance teaching them about eating sustainably and those sorts of things. So while we're still finding our feet in terms of the rhythm for recording, me especially, we are both so committed and excited for this podcast, and I'm really determined to make the best of it. So yes, please like and subscribe, and we will see you for our next episode in a couple of weeks. But that's it for now. I have to go figure out what to make for dinner and hang out a load of washing. Bye.